Futuria Fantasia, Fall 1939 ***** Futuria Fantasia Fall 1939 Volume 1 No. 2 10 cents a newer, plumper Futuria Fantasia greets you, with more articles, more value and less technocracy. The reason for the scanty garb of our summer issue was time, that villain who holds his sword over all humanity. I didn't have time to contact various authors and fans, and there was little time for mimeographing, since the Angel expedition to New York was fast approaching, and ye editor was wandering around in a daze waiting for the day when his bus would sweep him off to Manhattan. The trip to New York was a happily successful thing. Futuria Fantasia would like to toss an orchid to the editors who contributed so generously to the convention, and at the same time blare forth with a juicy raspberry for a certain trio of fans who made fools of themselves at the conv. And you know who we mean. But enough of this boring fan quarreling ****. Action should have been taken at the convention, and there's no use bawling over fused rockets. This issue we bring you another cover by Hans Bock. We sincerely believe his work is superior to any work done in fan mags for a long time. He has to be good ****, for he is a protege of no less a person than Maxfield Parrish, whose paintings have, at one time or another in the past decades, made more than one home beautiful. If you haven't had a Maxfield Parrish painting in your home, it ain't a home. And we feel proud of Hans because we acted as agent to Weird Tales while conventioneering in New York. Latest report is that Hans is doing an illustration for Weird Tales. Here's luck, Hans, and may you keep up the good work while staying in Manhattan. With this issue we introduce 2 new fans, and 2 new authors. They are Anthony Corvase, who makes his part-time home in Tucson, Arizona, and Guy Amory of Phoenix. Corvase, 22 years old, has done a neat job with his Return from the Dead. In the winter edition he will let go with another original symphonic abduction. Guy Amory, after some few hours of hard labor, finally got an interview out of Hank Kuttner, which is work in any man's lingo. Both boys were in LA for 2 weeks about a month back, and gave their promise to support FA from now to Dwaco, the day when Astounding comes out hourly. Ron Reynolds, whose satire on technocracy received favorable comment, comes back with his views and news about the convention ****, and Corinne Ellsworth, gracious female fan of LA, presents us with something that is distasteful to me, the case of the vanishing cafeteria. I protest against her grossly horrid insinuations about my gal's broths. Manhattaneers will tell you that it is only at the full moon that I can concoct one, though a cafeteria or automat atmosphere does work wonders with my ego, especially if there are enough people watching to make it profitable. As you will notice, there is not a great deal to be said about technocracy in this issue ***, mainly because I am tired of talking and the response we get is very funny, if not childish. If someone cares to challenge us on technocracy, we shall be only too glad to answer all questions. But when a bunch of crackpots start dragging in their own theories, relatives and human nature, then we give up the ghost. We take this occasion to challenge the so far silent John W. Campbell to a duel of words on this subject. How's about it, Campbell? The Gallopard Forsendike, A Tale of the Indies, by H.V.B. He remembered, but never dreamed its source, the old poem which began, "A Swibush is an Indian," and as he leaned back in his chair puffing on a pipe, his lean bronzed face darkly serious against the moonglow, a little echo hooted from the hills as if an owl cried. Then Edris called. At the alarmant tingle of the bell, like a tinient tang of a rattlesnake's tremor, he ran to the telephone and shouted eagerly, "Edris, my darling." Then he remembered to take receiver off the hook. He was answered by dead silence. Then, to his amazement and utter horror, a long damp tongue swished out of the mouthpiece, lapped his cheek and disappeared in a puff of acrid steam. "The Martians," was his first thought, as he tremblingly buttered his toast. Then he heard Edris' voice. It floated easily from the ceiling as if it were inverted steam. He looked up, and discovered overhead that the planet India had vanished from the map. It had peeled itself loose and inched over the wallpaper and was now wrapping itself like a second skin around a baked potato. "But that's impossible," he breathed. "There aren't any potatoes in August, and especially in bathtubs." Again Edris' voice reached him. What was she saying? "Go with the pretty men, dear, they'll feed you an orange." But that sounded crazy. He was worried, and clung to a red-hot radiator which melted into a puddle at his touch, burning a round red hole in the rug. 17 puffs of black vapor, he counted them, whiffed up winsomely from the charred circle. "Around and around," he said, dreamily, remembering the second line of the poem, "when fifthly is perplexed." Edris oozed out of the shadows to him, long-like and snaky, with fear thy fettles adorning her foursome, and a blaze in her eyes like the Herm verst of Whitby. "Island, island," he repeated to himself, thrusting a negatory hand through the farthing of her rabdi, and her mouth parted to disclose another mouth, from which issued visible words like ticker tape of steam in chilly air, so surprising him that he could only stand rooted, like a tree. It was then that he noticed the snakes in her hair, as the leaves sprouted from his cheeks and from every simple vesicle of his tubular perpendages, sometimes cursorily appellated eyebreams. Among the amidery of her fascinating fingers, which she waved before his face like the shimmer of phosphorescence on a salty sea on hot midsummer moonlight, took shape an elegant form, something reminiscent of a redchief. Within his sore heart a black thought grew, spurred by the excess of his agonized birtwitters, bidding him to slay and do so quickly. He reached for a weapon. There was nothing at hand but a slug. He groaned. A slug against snakes. What chance of victory? As though she'd read his thought, she moved nearer, her laughter lifting and lowering like a fragile boat on waves of honey. One by one her eyes, 390 of them, popped out with hollow slaps like corks from bottles, while within the dull draperies of scarlet which adorned the farthest lamp-post stirred an unnameable bloody something which sent forth a thrill of foreboding into his anguished heart, and he remembered the fourth and last lines of the poem "He who dines alone is hexed." He uttered a gurgling scream as she leaped upon him, and her snails torn and the steam of her bare eye sockets scalded him. Then the ensanguined thing crawled limply over the face of the blinding desert and the vacant sun stared sightlessly at nothing. "I'm through." By Fuionya, the editor of this magazine, under the impression that I am still one of that queer tribe known as science fiction fans, has asked me to write an article. I am no longer a science fiction fan. I'm through. However, I have decided to do the article and explain with my chin leading just why I am through. Here goes. As to science fiction, the trouble with me, I think, is that I have outgrown the stuff mentally, and that's not a boast, seeing the type of minds modern science fiction is dished up for. I'll admit there are a few exceptions, but on the whole, SF fans are as arrogant, self-satisfied, conspicuously blind, and critically moronic a group as the good Lord has allowed to people the earth. I don't blush that I was once a SF fan, starting back in 26. I merely thank my personal gods that somewhere along the route I woke up and began to see SF as it really is. The superiority complex found in group known as science fiction fans is probably unequaled anywhere. Their certitude in their superiority, as readers of SF, over all other fiction, is representative of an absolutely incredibly stupid complacence. Facing the business squarely, we can see why SF lays claim to such superiority, for no other obvious reason than that such fiction is the bastard child of science and the romantic temperament. But not, good Lord, because it is instructive. This has too long been preached, until SF readers actually believe it. The amazing naivete of these readers who think their literature is superior merely because they think it teaches, this simple moves me to despair. The fact is, any literature whose function it is to teach, ceases to be literature as such, it becomes didactic literature, which is the color of another horse. When literature becomes obsessed by ideas as such, it is no longer literature. Just how the delusion could have arisen that writing, because invested with scientific symbols, automatically became possessed of new and more precious values, is beyond me to explain. Ideas are out of place in literature unless they are subordinate to the spirit of the story, but SF readers have never perceived this. Give us science, they shriek, running with clenched fists uprisen to the stars. We want science. Give us the great God. Well, they are given science. And what does it turn out to be? For the most part the offscourings of the lunatic fringe. Talk about scientists being inspired by SF stories, few. Why, not one SF writer in 50 has the remotest idea of what he is talking about. He just picks up some elementary idea and kicks hell out of it. I'll wager that no scientist is going to produce very spectacularly on the basis of any ideas provided by SF. It's possible, but wholly improbable. Scientists don't tick that way. Another amusing fallacy, this well-known business of Wells and Verne doing some predicting. It's one of the biggest laughs of all. They made a flock of predictions, a few of which were realized, and some only in ways most vaguely related to the original conception. How many ideas did they have that never have been realized and never will? Give them credit for being good and often logical guesses, perhaps, but don't claim that as a merit for their writing. And how many other good guesses must there have been who never got around to setting down their predictions in print? There is but one affectation about Wells' scientific stories which he published before he discovered his capability at characterization, and this is the affectation of imagination. There is no genuine imagination in beating out cleverness of the SF type. The point of view, the inventive quality necessary for their construction, is the same as with the widely circulated tales of Nick Carter. Science fiction stories are not struck forth with a creative hand, they are manufactured products put together piecemeal, none of them being written in any but the calmest and most conscious mood. They are lacking in that important element of all really great works of the imagination, inspiration. And what is inspiration? It is essentially the soaring of one's soul without the knowledge of the mind. In the gleaming moment the mind becomes the slave of the spirit. Read Wells' experiment in autobiography and see why and what he thinks of his early writings of SF. He admits that they were only a means to an end, a preparation for his more serious writing that was to come later, Plato's Republic and More's Utopia also serving largely to hasten Wells' utopian proclivities. When he really began to take his predictions seriously, he began to turn out the important stuff which now bores the average SF enthusiast silly, or should I say sillier. As for Verne, his stuff has never been literature except for boys. It is innocuous adventure, stuff that will not pervert morals. It is not too badly written, and the language is so simple that Verne is readily to be read in the original French. In fact, some of his stuff serves as textbooks in French classes in American schools. But in the main, what I am speaking about now is SF as it is constituted today. All of this modern SF is worthless except in perhaps one minor respect, and I'm not even sure of that. It can open the minds of boys and girls reaching puberty, giving them a more Catholic attitude toward startling new ideas. However, it is so very often fatal at the same time, in that these boys and girls become obsessed with it. It enmeshes them until, as I said, they become incredibly blind to all else, so certain are they of the superiority of their hobby over all other fiction. There are exceptions, but my experience has proven that the exceptions are by far a minority. Also, I will admit that SF can on occasion provide escapist flights of imagination. In fact, it can be admirable for this. But this type of SF has become exceedingly rare because this crazy superstructure of science, and even more so adventure, has become such a fetish that sound writing concerning people is rarely to be found. In pulp science fiction, never. and the frightful smugness fostered by the modern SF magazines is simply appalling. It seems that not only the readers, but the editors and writers as well, cannot or will not see anything beyond their own perverted models. Just as one example which I remember very well, look how Brave New World, the admirable and really important novel by Huxley, was received a few years ago. It was Clark Ashton Smith, I believe, who mentioned it as embodying some of Huxley's habitual pornography. Simply, stunning P. Schiller Miller, whom, I might mention, I consider as one of the most intellectual authors and fans. And, reviewing the book, C.A. Brandt also decried its preoccupation with sex, but said complacently that it might, at least, bring to the attention of people that there was such a thing as the science fictionists and their so-called literature. Of all the damned nonsense. Brave New World was, as a matter of fact, a satire on sex, and of far more importance than to bring to the attention of people that there is such a thing as sci fiction. Huxley conceived a future world in which Ford's mechanistic contributions had become so emphatic as to deprive the people of all but an animal interest in sex. He projects a more normal man into such a civilization for no other reason than to characterize present-day tendencies with searing satire. But Brandt, he evidently would demolish this to set up in its stead a space wrecked on Mars atrocity. To get back to the subject, it is my honest opinion that no person of very conspicuous intelligence can subsist very considerably on SF after he begins to mature intellectually. There is simply not enough to it to provide intellectual or spiritual nourishment. He may string along with it for a few years out of habit or some mental quirk, but stuff aimed at juvenile minds cannot very long sustain a person of mature years, unless that person is himself a mental adolescent. The way the fans flocked to the SF League, indulged in tests to prove their superiority over other readers, the silly letters in the mags, the petty internal strife, and many other things, have served to widen the gulf between me and SF. The most important thing, however, is that I have discovered that there's been too much else of importance, real importance, that has been said and written in this world, and is being and will be, for me to desire to give much attention to such a petty thing as SF anymore. I shall read on the fringe of it, but increasingly less frequently, I'm afraid. I might have summed this entire thing up by saying, I'm satiated, but that wouldn't be the entire truth. The entire truth would be, I am satiated and much wiser. In conclusion, let me point out that this is only one man's opinion. I have intentionally been harsh in my estimates. Maybe some points are in need of qualification or elucidation, but by and large, I stand back of what I have written here. Amen. The above article is subject to criticism. Therefore, any and all fans and authors who disagree will find their articles against this one by a famous author welcomed and printed in the winter edition of Futuria. The winter edition will be out during the month of December, so contributions should be mailed immediately to Futuria Fantasia, 3054-1/2 West 12th Street, Los Angeles. Editor, Futuria Volume 103 Fantasia. Out in December. 10-cents contributions welcomed. Short stories preferred. No personal stuff or caustic feuding. Humor wanted. Material bought but never paid for, so what can you lose? We suggest you send a quarter for the next 3 issues of Futuria Fantasia and save yourselves a nickel. Contributing authors / Willy Ley, Rocklin, Haas, Kuttner, Ackerman, Corvée. Satan's Mistress by Doug Rogers, where flames of purgatory twist, and earth's transgressors dwell. She dances swathed in heated mist, before the gates of hell. Her gleaming naked body flees before the demon fires, along the shores of molten seas, ridged high by fuming pyres. Her hair, a liquid cape of flame, whips hot about her breasts, a strumpet in the devil's name, which he alone invests, gives power to a woman born of brimstone, steam and smoke. Her soul, a spark in early morn, flares up to share the yoke of evil. Mephistopheles upon his throne of death, unheeding shrieks and doleful pleas choked out by dying breath. The devil's mistress dances down through dungeons carved from bone, upon her head the sinner's crown, each jewel a sigh, a moan. Before the wailing souls in caves, tossed down from earthly things, to charred and cindered minds of slaves her dancing passion brings. Then, tired of her evil joke, and laughing at her games, she draws about her fiery cloak to vanish in the flames. Lost Soul by Henry Haas. From far across the desolate moor I heard the echo of a wild and anguished cry, a tortured voice that shrieked aloud a word, a name, that shivered 'cross the leaden sky. I stopped, stared round, I knew that voice did sound a faint, familiar note within my brain. I fled across that dark and desolate ground, seeking out the direction whence it came. Forebodingly, that voice kept echoing within a brain that did not seem my own. A vague remembrance of a recent thing I could not grasp. I was a lost and lone forsaken soul that sped I knew not where, wondering frightenedly what I did seek. At last I found it, there beside a bare and lonely road, when trembling and weak, I gazed upon a gallows tree where hung a corpse, the very sight of which did freeze the blood within my veins, a corpse that swung grotesquely to and fro upon the breeze. And then, through rising panic, closer still I peered, then saw, and knew. Again that cry that shrieked a name, the cry that issued shrill from my own throat, and shivered to the sky. Asterisk 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 asterisk, the name I shriek beneath the gallows tree was mine. The dead thing swinging there was me. The truth about goldfish, Kuttner. For some time I have been wondering what the world is coming to. More than once I have got up in the middle of the night, padded toward the bureau, and, peering into the mirror, exclaimed, "Stinky, what is the world coming to?" The responses I have thus obtained I am not at liberty to reveal, but I am coming to believe that either I have a most mysterious mirror or something is wrong somewhere. I am intrigued by my mirror. It came into my possession under extraordinary and eerie circumstances, being borne into my bedroom one midsummer's eve by a procession of cats dressed oddly in bright-colored sunshoots and carrying parasols. I was asleep at the time, but awoke just as the last tail whisked out the door, and immediately I sprang out of bed and cut my left big toe rather badly on the edge of the mirror. I remember that as I first looked into the fathomless, glassy depths, a curious thought came into my mind. What I said to myself, is the world coming to? And what is science fiction coming to? It is quite evident that a logical and critical analysis of science fictional trends is a desideratum today. The whole trouble, I feel, can be laid to velity. I have wanted to use that word for years. Unfortunately, I have now forgotten exactly what it means, but one can safely attribute trouble to it. Where was I? Today science fiction is split by schisms and impaled on the trilon of bad thoughts. The fans, I mean, not the writers. The writers have been split and impaled for years, but nothing can be done about that. In a way, it's a good thing. Look at Jules Verne, Victor Hugo, and, for that matter, the late unfortunate Tobias J. Coote. I put flowers on his grave only yesterday. He lies at rest, though his ghastly fate pursued him even to the grave. And I attribute Mr. Coote's fate to nothing less than the schisms of fandom. For Coote was a hard-working young man, serious, earnest, with promise of becoming a first-class writer. He took life very solemnly, almost grimly. My job, he told me once, is to give people what they want. I want a drink, I said to him. Give me one. But Coote couldn't be turned from his rash course. He began to write science fiction. That was where the trouble started. Is it science, he pondered. Or is it fiction? Already the cleavage, the split, had begun. It was a matter of logical progression toward ultimate division. Coote got in the habit of typing the science into his stories with his left hand, and the fiction with his right. He began to twitch and worry. He got up nights. He was troubled, uneasy. I have one thing left to cling to, he muttered desperately, fandom. I can point to that and say, it is real. It exists. It is dependable. When fandom had its schism, Coote immediately developed a split personality. It was rather horrible. His left side, the scientific side, grew cold and hard and keen. He grew a Van Dyke on the left side of his face, and his left hand was stained with acids and chemicals. But the right side of his face became dissipated and disreputable, with a leer in the eye and a scornful, sneering curve to the lip. He grew a tiny moustache on the right side, waxed it, and twirled it continually. It was rather horrid, but worse was yet to come. One day the inevitable happened. Tobias J. Coote split in half, with a faint ripping sound and a despairing wail. He was, of course, buried in 2 coffins and in 2 graves, the wretched man's fate pursuing him even beyond death. Well, you can understand how I feel, what with the mirror, the cats in sunshoots and the weasel. Or haven't I mentioned the weasel? I mean the brown one, of course, and he is, perhaps, worst of all. It isn't what he says so much as his sneering, ironic tone. The other weasels, who live in the spare bedroom with the colt, were happy enough till he arrived, but now they are arranging a schism. As you will readily see, something must be done about it before science fiction collapses and the standard falls trailing into the dust. I suggest that we mobilize, and, to avoid dissension, give everybody the rank of general. Then, first of all, we can march to my house and get rid of that weasel. The brown one, of course. The others are welcome to stay as long as they like. I feel that they are weak rather than wicked, and need only a good excuse, or should I say example, in order to brace themselves up. Contributions to the fund for the mobilization of science fiction and the extermination of brown weasels may be sent to me in care of this magazine. Do not delay. Each moment you wait brings us closer to doom, and, besides, I need a new piano. H.K. Red Freehafers Polaris 404 S Lake Avenue Pasadena, Cardiff. 10 cents. Godbusters. Eric Freer. Mark Twain, in his Mysterious Stranger, makes no bones about his sentiments towards Christianity and the God illusion. Speaking of Christian progress, he says, "It is a remarkable progress. In 5 or 6,000 years 5 or 6 high civilizations have risen, flourished, commanded the wonder of the world, then faded out and disappeared, and not one of them except the latest ever invented any sweeping and adequate way to kill people. They all did their best, to kill being the chiefest ambition of the human race and the earliest incident in its history, but only the Christian civilization has scored a triumph to be proud of. 2 or 3 centuries from now it will be recognized that all the competent killers are Christians. Then the pagan world will go to school to the Christian, not to acquire his religion, but his guns. The Turk and the Chinaman will buy these to kill missionaries and converts with." Again, in speaking of God, comparing the God conception to an impossible dream, he continues, "Strange, because they are so frankly and hysterically insane, like all dreams, a God who could have made good children as easily as bad, yet preferred to make bad ones, who could have made every one of them happy, yet never made a single happy one, who made them prize their bitter life, yet stingily cut it short, who gave his angels eternal happiness unearned, yet required his other children to earn it, who gave his angels painless lives, yet cursed his other children with biting miseries and maladies of mind and body, who mouths justice and invented hell, mouths mercy and invented hell, mouths golden rules and forgiveness multiplied by 70 times 7, and invented hell, who mouths morals to other people and has none himself, who frowns upon crimes, yet commits them all, who created man without invitation, then tries to shuffle the responsibility for man's acts upon man, instead of honorably placing it where it belongs, upon himself, and finally, with altogether divine obtuseness, invites this poor, abused slave to worship him." One wonders what the Christian Ethiopians thought when the Christian Italians playfully, and undoubtedly with the sanction of the Holy Mother Church, began to spray them with liquid fire, blast their cities, and mutilate their children with the newest Christian improvements on the Christian weapons of war. They probably couldn't quite understand the logic or the fairness of it, but we must not blame the Ethiopians for failing to comprehend, as they haven't had the benefits of Christian civilization for as long a time as the Italians. Let's put a stop to this shilly-shallying. Let's put these destructive atheists in their place. The Christians know that God does exist. That God is all-powerful. So it would be only a simple matter to arrange an appointment with God. We don't exactly know what his office hours are, and prevail upon him to write a message in fire saying, "You bet, God is the real McCoy," or something similar, and spread it all over the sky. That'll convince even the most reluctant atheists, and it should be a rather simple trick for a God who once stopped the sun, created a universe in 6 days, and engineered an immaculate conception. Clarence Darrow, world-famous criminal lawyer, the man who made the silver-tongued and godly Bryant appear the verbose addle-pat he was, beneath his platitudinous phrases, during the Scopes trial, said, to an interviewer, "All my life I've been an agnostic. But I am no longer an agnostic, I am now an atheist." The pendulum up and down, back and forth, up and down. First the quick flight skyward, gradually slowing, reaching the pinnacle of the curve, poising a moment, then flashing earthward again, faster and faster at a nauseating speed, reaching the bottom and hurtling aloft on the opposite side. Up and down. Back and forth. Up and down. How long it had continued this way Evil didn't know. It might have been millions of years he'd spent sitting here in the massive glass pendulum watching the world tip one way and another, up and down, dizzily before his eyes until they ached. Since first they had locked him in the pendulum's round glass head and set it swinging, it had never stopped or changed. Continuous, monotonous movements over and above the ground. So huge was this pendulum that it shadowed 100 feet or more with every majestic sweep of its gleaming shape, dangling from the metal intestines of the shining machine overhead. It took 3 or 4 seconds for it to traverse the 100 feet one way, 3 or 4 seconds to come back. The prisoner of time. That's what they called him now. Now, fettered to the very machine he had planned and constructed. A son, of time. A of time. With every swing of the pendulum it echoed in his thoughts. Forever like this until he went insane. He tried to focus his eyes on the arching hotness of the earth as it swept past beneath him. They had laughed at him a few days before. Or was it a week? A month? A year? He didn't know. This ceaseless pitching had filled him with an aching confusion. They had laughed at him when he said, some time before all this, he could bridge time gaps and travel into futurity. He had designed a huge machine to warp space, invited 30 of the world's most gifted scientists to help him finish his colossal attempt to scratch the future wall of time. The hour of the accident spun back to him now through misted memory. The display of the time machine to the public, The exact moment when he stood on the platform with the 30 scientists and pulled the main switch. The scientists, all of them, blasted into ashes from wild electrical flames. Before the eyes of 2 million witnesses who had come to the laboratory or were tuned in by television at home. He had slain the world's greatest scientists. He recalled the moment of shocked horror that followed. Something radically wrong had happened to the machine. He, Leibel, the inventor of the machine, had staggered backward, his clothes flaming and eating up about him. No time for explanations. Then he had collapsed in the blackness of pain and numbing defeat. Swept to a hasty trial, Leibel faced jeering throngs calling out for his death. "Destroy the time machine," they cried. "And destroy this murderer with it." Murderer. And he had tried to help humanity. This was his reward. One man had leaped onto the tribunal platform at the trial, crying, "No! Don't destroy the machine. I have a better plan. A revenge for this man." His finger pointed at Leibel where the inventor sat unshaven and haggard, his eyes failure glazed. "We shall rebuild his machine, take his precious metals, and put up a monument to his slaughtering. We'll put him on exhibition for life within his executioning device." The crowd roared approval like thunder shaking the tribunal hall. Then, pushing hands, days in prison, months. Finally, led forth into the hot sunshine, he was carried in a small rocket car to the center of the city. The shock of what he saw brought him back to reality. They had rebuilt his machine into a towering timepiece with a pendulum. He stumbled forward, urged on by thrusting hands, listening to the roar of thousands of voices damning him. Into the transparent pendulum head they pushed him and clamped it tight with weldings. Then they set the pendulum swinging and stood back. Slowly, very slowly, it rocked back and forth, increasing in speed. Leibel had pounded futilely at the glass, screaming. The faces became blurred, were only tearing pink blobs before him. On and on like this, for how long? He hadn't minded it so much at first, that first night. He couldn't sleep, but it was not uncomfortable. The lights of the city were comets with tails that pelted from right to left like foaming fireworks. But as the night wore on he felt a gnawing in his stomach, that grew worse. He got very sick and vomited. The next day he couldn't eat anything. They never stopped the pendulum, not once. Instead of letting him eat quietly, they slid the food down the stem of the pendulum in a special tube, in little round parcels that plunked at his feet. The first time he attempted eating he was unsuccessful, it wouldn't stay down. In desperation he hammered against the cold glass with his fists until they bled, crying hoarsely, but he heard nothing but his own weak, fear-racked words muffled in his ears. After some time had elapsed he got so that he could eat, even sleep while traveling back and forth this way. They allowed him small glass loops on the floor and leather thongs with which he tied himself down at night and slept a soundless slumber without sliding. People came to look at him. He accustomed his eyes to the swift flight and followed their curiosity-etched faces, first close by in the middle, then far away to the right, middle again, and to the left. He saw the faces gaping, speaking soundless words, laughing and pointing at the prisoner of time traveling forever nowhere. But after a while the town people vanished and it was only tourists who came and read the sign that said, "This is the prisoner of time, John Leavell, who killed 30 of the world's finest scientists." The school children, on the electrical moving sidewalk, stopped to stare in childish awe. The prisoner of time. Often he thought of that title. God, but it was ironic, that he should invent a time machine and have it converted into a clock, and that he, in its pendulum, should mete out the years, traveling with time. He couldn't remember how long it had been. The days and nights ran together in his memory. His unshaven cheeks had developed a short beard and then ceased growing. How long a time? How long? Once a day they sent down a tube after he ate and vacuumed up the cell, disposing of any wastes. Once in a great while they sent him a book, but that was all. The robots took care of him now. Evidently the humans thought it a waste of time to bother over their prisoner. The robots brought the food, cleaned the pendulum cell, oiled the machinery, worked tirelessly from dawn until the sun crimsoned westward. At this rate it could keep on for centuries. But one day as Leavell stared at the city and its people in the blur of ascent and descent, he perceived a swarming darkness that extended in the heavens. The city rocket ships that crossed the sky on pillars of scarlet flame darted helplessly, frightenedly for shelter. The people ran like water splashed on tiles, screaming soundlessly. Alien creatures fluttered down, great gelatinous masses of black that sucked out the life of all. They clustered thickly over everything, glistened momentarily upon the pendulum and its body above, over the whirling wheels and roaring bowels of the metal creature once a time machine. An hour later they dwindled away over the horizon and never came back. The city was dead. Up and down, Leavell went on his journey to nowhere. In his prison, a strange smile etched on his lips. In a week or more, he knew, he would be the only man alive on Earth. Elation flamed within him. This was his victory. Where the other men had planned the pendulum as a prison, it had been an asylum against annihilation now. Day after day the robots still came, worked, unabated by the visitation of the Black Horde. They came every week, brought food, tinkered, checked, oiled, cleaned. Up and down, back and forth, the pendulum. 1,000 years must have passed before the sky again showed life over the dead earth. A silvery bullet of space dropped from the clouds, steaming, and hovered over the dead city where now only a few solitary robots performed their tasks. In the gathering dusk the lights of the metropolis glimmered on. Other automatons appeared on the rampways like spiders on twisting webs, scurrying about, checking, oiling, working in their crisp mechanical manner. And the creatures in the alien projectile found the time mechanism, the pendulum swinging up and down, back and forth, up and down. The robots still cared for it, oiled it, tinkering. 1,000 years this pendulum had swung. Made of glass, the round disc at the bottom was, but now when food was lowered by the robots through the tube it lay untouched. Later, when the vacuum tube came down and cleaned out the cell, it took that very food with it. Back and forth, up and down. The visitors saw something inside the pendulum. Pressed closely to the glass side of the cell was the face of a whitened skull, a skeleton visage that stared out over the city with empty sockets and an enigmatical smile wreathing its lipless teeth. Back and forth, up and down. The strangers from the void stopped the pendulum in its course, ceased its swinging and cracked open the glass cell, exposing the skeleton to view. And in the gleaming light of the stars the skull face continued its weird grinning as if it knew that it had conquered something. Had conquered time. The prisoner of time, Evil, had indeed traveled along the centuries. And the journey was at an end. Is it true what they say about Kuttner? Or The Man with the Weird Tail by Guy Amory? The extremely interesting specimen to your right is not a head from a formaldehyde jar, though at times we have seen it, or him, pickled. It is Henry Kuttner, the laziest man who ever punched a typewriter and got paid for it. Like several other LA natives, he is too busy living to do much worrying. And besides, what does it get him? A check from Weird Tales. Henry has just sold them a 20,000-word yarn about a lack of Atlantis. At present he has finished a story headed for startling 50,000 words or more, and been working with C.L. Moore on a new chiller. Hank's first story for Astounding was a disappointment, but he fully made up for that by turning in a Sockaroo to Unknown called The Misguided Halo, written after the fashion of his most highly cherished author Thorne Smith. What the fans don't know is that this little tale had a different ending than the one used by Campbell. Kuttner's finest to the Halo was hysterically funny, but John W. thought otherwise and tagged a new finish on it, spoiling it as far as this author is concerned. Kuttner is 24 years old. He's been writing most of his life, learned how to type at the age of 8 and hasn't left it alone since. Was born with a type bar in his mouth. Lives in a quiet catacomb called Beverly Hills, the first cemetery I've ever seen with street lamps. At present, though I have broached the subject on numerous occasions, Hank steadfastly refuses to write for slick magazines. His best excuse being his laziness. Hank's is quiet speaking, sincere. But he has a sense of humor, the kind that hits you a midriff abruptly. He is the perfect deadpan jokester. His digs many times being too subtle for your correspondent to catch until several moments have passed, Kuttner is always ready to rush in mildly and put the immature fans to rout. It is only when you see the ghastly pictures that he takes out at his charnel cave that you realize his true sense of comedy. He and Hopkins and Schroyer, the fiends, get together in outer garb, in horrifying pose, and bring forth films that would shake the mind of even such a horror as Robert Bloch. Kuttner likes the way C. L. Moore writes, and who doesn't? He wishes he could write like her, but claims that when he tries imitating it comes out so much trash. If you've read any of his stories you realize that Hank is a master of the binge-it-a-boom type of fiction, but with feeling. He puts more incident in 10 pages of Ilac than any other author in Weird, and makes you feel it. He paints his picture with masterfully abrupt dabs, while Moore lays on her horror with the touch of a mosaic master, building up. Kuttner knocks you down and keeps you bouncing. Moore swirls you in cobwebs and totes you away into infinity. Combining their efforts in 37 for Quest of the Starstone they turned out something to remember, with Hank's flair for lightning pace and Moore's for description they went to town. That's about all we can say about Hank. He doesn't like New York because it's too dirty, noisy and big. He dotes on Thorne Smith. Right now he's trying to crash Argosy with a story, and in the future you can expect some big things from this quiet author. Oh, yes, and is it true what they say about Kuttner? No, he doesn't use dope to get the effect in his stories. He has a massive painting of Art Barnes on his desk, and when he prepares to write he squints once and once only at that painting to get gruesome atmosphere. Then he starts typing. Take a bow, Mr. Kuttner. Just bend over a little more, Hank. Okay, Barnes, hump. Ouch. Kuttner. The End of Kuttner, analysis from J. Chapman Misk. Pretty snappy cover on the first issue of Fufa. At least I like it. Simple stuff looks best on my Maud covers. By the way, what, I'd like to know, is the sex of that Bokean creature? Why, Mr. Misk? We thought you abhorred sex. TSK. TSK. I'm for technocracy. Personally I suspect Reynolds of being Kuttner. Nope. Try again, Jack. Your poetry not so hot. You wandered a bit and were melodramatic. Dale Hart posts, book cover good. Yerk and Reynolds interesting. Forey's story unique. Your poem full of thought but it didn't scan very well. Maybe it's because I'm more British than I am Scandinavian. Brad, how about an increase in pages? This issue much too small. Hope you like this bigger size, Dale. Gertrude Hemkin mumbles, cover startling, technocracy article sounds sensible, Ron Reynolds satire amusing and contains a few kernels of logic, at that. And where have I read 4SJS record before? We wonder, Henry Hass types, Hans Bock steals first honors for his cover. Hope you can get Hans to do all your illustrations each month. Yes, Henry, we'll have Bock on the cover every issue from now on, even though he's busy in New York with his panting, since the editorial for Fufa was stenciled. The December issue of Weird Tales has appeared on the stands all over America with its cover done by Bock. It was Futuria Fantasia's pleasant duty, this summer, to bring about that deal between Book and Weird, and we are justly proud of Hans and his success. Here's hoping he hits astounding next. Haas continues, best written feature was your poem, Brad. Next is Reynolds' piece and the one by Ackerman. Due to lack of space in this issue we are condensing the above letters. In the winter edition there will be a bigger letter department, that is, if you write in. We're anxious to know how you liked our special The Pendulum. Until then, farewell. Return from Death by Anthony Corvase. They were seated in his parked car, miles from the city, when Robert told Ellen, "I'll always love you, darling, forever and ever. I just can't help myself, and I don't want to." The girl nestled closer without reply. "And if something should happen to one of us, the other would wait, because love like ours will never know death. It must go on, for eternity," he continued. "I know that I'll love you even when I'm dead, and if there are such things as spirits, I'll come back to you, somehow. Or would it frighten you?" Ellen pouted, "Don't be so funereal. It makes me feel strangely inside. Of course nothing can separate us. It's a beautiful night and we're wasting it on, oh, dear." Her eyes had glanced at the small clock on the paneling. "It's late, Robert. You must hurry me home now or Mother will be furious." Sighing, Robert started the car. As they roared toward town over the twisting roadway, suddenly the car swerved. "Look out, Bob! A man!" It was Ellen's high voice screaming. The car skidded sickeningly on loose gravel, crashed thunderously through the railing bordering the highway, and ricocheted, turning over and over, halting as wreckage. Robert was crushed under the metal bulk, losing consciousness. Thrown clear, Ellen scrambled to the man, bent over him. Something more than pain filmed his eyes. He heard himself muttering, "I'll come back, you wait," in a failing whisper as illimitable darkness swept over him, accompanied by dreadful nausea. A point of light appeared in the void, expanding into a dazzling rectangle which split into thousands of lesser planes. These shaped a geometric pattern which whirled dizzily, humming, the drone rising in pitch with every sickening revolution, becoming incessant mechanical scream, "And this is death. This is past human endurance." With sudden omniscience he knew that he was dead and the meaning of the spinning pattern. The knowledge ebbed and carried with it all of his memories except for Ellen's face and her name. The wheeling design parted like a curtain, and Robert observed beyond it a branching path spreading before him like a flattened tree. At the end of every fork was Ellen's face, wavering and blurred. He fixed his attention upon the nearest forcation, aspiring toward it desperately, and sensed himself hovering in space. Shock, as of lightning coursing his veins, knotted him with agony. Involuntarily his eyes squeezed shut. Icy air tortured his lungs. As he raised his voice in weak protest, the pain ceased and he relaxed, spent. His eyes continued shut, as though the lids were gummed down. Failing in many attempts to open them, he quested food, found it, and consoled himself with it. Occasionally plaintive voices babbled unintelligibly, arousing him. Always, if he listened, he heard a gentle murmur reply to the voices. And then everything was quiet. He felt very sleepy. Finally he dropped off into slumber, deep and restful. Between periods of sleep, Robert struggled with his heavy eyelids. Memories might have associated his sightlessness with blindness, but he had none. There were only Ellen's face and her name which, when especially desperate, he called again and again. Gradually his vision became clear, and he stared in awe at a world of immensity which was peopled with titans. The picture of Ellen in this gigantic place troubled him, for the colossal beings looked upon him as an animated toy. Often he was elevated to their reeking mouths, kissed, and dropped aside, if he were insistent upon attention, inquiring for Ellen. The giants beat him and thrust him from their presence. Inert bare-surfaced looming things enclosed him, from some of which, when he approached them, he was kicked away. Incredibly huge portals barred egress to an outer world, from which seeped strange sharp odors. By calling his one word to the world beyond the doors, Robert endeavored to explain to the Titans that Ellen might possibly be outside. But they hushed him with amusement, sometimes with abuse. There had been others prisoned here like himself while he had not seen, but they had vanished now. But this bothered him not in the least. His thoughts were of Ellen, and finally the giants lifted him and put him into a windowless room and clamped a fretted ceiling over it. The chamber rocked gently. He realized that it was being moved from one place to another. Leaping frantically he touched the ceiling's lattice, clung to it, struggling to force himself through its interstices. Unsuccessful, tiring, he fell back, crouched in a corner, weeping. Motion of transit ended, the confining ceiling vanished. Robert scrambled over a wall, dropped to the ground of the outer world, whose heavy conflicting odors, dazzling lights and moving shadows alarmed him. Dim with distance was the withdrawing form of a giant, which he pursued, crying out his one word, Ellen. The giant vanished among weird wavering plants. Alone, Robert skulked nervously through tall rustling things, was terrified at times by an unexpected sound or motion. But the swaying things appeared unaware of him and he became self-confident. Discovering a stretch of damp earth gemmed with puddles, he drank. His head cocked at a sound reminiscent of Ellen, her soothing voice. A giantess had appeared over him. She was Ellen. At sight of her, Robert's pent memories burst free, overwhelming his consciousness with turbulent pageantry. He thrust up his arms, gently indulgent. The girl bent and drew him to her breast. She cuddled him, cooing to him. At the moment her monstrous size did not concern him. "I've found you. I've found you," he cried. "Oh, Ellen, if only you knew how lonely it has been." He opened his glad heart to her in a stammering urgency, bliss in his eyes, tears in his voice. Breathless, he raised his face to the girl's. She hesitated. Then she kissed him and set him down at her feet. She strode away. Crying with hurt amazement, he followed. She shook her head. She kept walking swiftly. He could not keep up with her and he stopped forlornly as she disappeared behind an obstruction. He stared after her with unbelieving eyes. Though mysteriously stunted, he had returned to her from death, and she had not accepted him. He stepped close to one of her prodigious footprints in the mud and surveyed it grimly. His eyes sought an impression of his own foot. And suddenly he cried in mingled grief and horror, for there in the mud was his footprint, small, strange, the footprint of a half-grown cat. Conventional notes or the report on the SFL ball game by the editor score, 27 sprained ankles to 3 cracked knees. Ross Rocklin, tall, freckled, red-haired, pleasant-looking, good-natured and humorous, that is Rocklin, and, by the way, in real life he spells it Rocklin. Makes the ideal traveling companion. Continually clicking away with his candid camera. Is versed in many subjects, likes plots about gigantic ideas, such as the moth, giant men, and the men and the mirror with an amorphous reflector, while Jupiter Trap gave us a giant siphon. Rocklin, 26, looks 22 or younger. Favorite expression, when agreeing with anyone is, "That's right." Spending most of my time after the convention with Ross, painting the town a delicate pink, I found that he is now trying a bit of weird writing which has been unsuccessful, and some Western concocting, ditto. Ross is quite different than his characters Deverell and Colby. Somehow I had imagined a Rocklin with a sharp gaunt face and bulging muscles. I found, instead, a good example of what might be called typical college species number #569Z, a cross between science and wit, well mixed and gelled in an Empire State tall body. Lives in Cincinnati. His characters, Colby and Deverell, are two of the most consistent and popular guys in SF today, according to Campbell. Charlie Honig, the dark horse who says nay to every manuscript I write for him. Dark-haired, dark-eyed, dark-skinned fiend who deals from the bottom of the manuscript pile over at science fiction. He has just learned to speak English during the past week and now he finds it much more fun picking out the manuscripts instead of leaping into a pile of them and bobbing up with one between his teeth. Makes lousy speeches. Is a human dynamo and expert guide to anyone in Manhattan. Makes money on the side selling shoestrings on the IRT between the Bronx and Coney Island. Father was a toupee manufacturer which makes Charlie heir to a bigwig's fortune. Thanks, Charlie, for your presence in New York to guide me around. And I just love science fiction. Payday DV. Impressions caught short. John W. Werewolf, Campbell, a scientific theory in a potato sack suit with high rubber boots to match. Julius Schwartz and Groucho Marx look-alikes. Mort Weisseringer, a plump smile. A merit, the man on the billboards with a mug of Milwaukee beer in his hand. Jovial, glasses, chubby. Not a bit mysterious. Forrest J. Ackerman, dressed in future garb at convention, looking like a fugitive from a costume shop. Willie Lay, a pair of thick-lensed glasses with an accent. Loans, moustache and gold tooth, double feature. Leslie Perry, Madam Butterfly with bangs. Henry Kuttner, a voice from a pile of cigarettes. Moroho, short and sweet, commonly referred to as the voice of Midge. Sikora, nervous breakdown with hair. Moskowitz, human foghorn, following his opening speech, New York gripped by earth tremors. Wollheim, communist, born in a revolving door, believes in revolutions, get it? Or do you? Sikora, Moskowitz, Torossi, Three Little Pigs. Manly Wade Wellman, the human jello. Bluth, a well-padded belch. Swisher, massive literary Babe Ruth, king of so what? Robert J. Thompson, the Leaning Tower of Pisa wired for sound. Local League Life night of Halloween. The Paramount Theatre found itself besieged with members of the SFL when 4SJ, Moroho, Pogo, Bradbury, Corvase, Rogers, Amory, Eldred and others met there to enjoy special preview of Bob Hope film Cat and Canary. Bradbury took along weird mask fashioned by Harryhausen and, in spookiest part of film, scared hell out of innocent blonde sitting alongside. Her scream was heard over in Pomona. Chandeliers rocked. Bradbury then took off mask and laughed and the girl tainted. 1 month ago Bradbury stenciled and printed the editorial to this second issue of Fu.Fa, only to be delayed by various troubles, mostly typewriter and stencil scourges, until now. In the meantime the December Weird had come out and Fufa's artist book had a cover on it. We'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Bok on his splendid work and wish him luck. Yerk, in one of his Britist moments, growled, "The little man who wasn't there, certainly didn't take up lots of air, but just think of the air he wouldn't take up if he were twins." Henry Haas, now a regular writer for Weird Again, according to late reports, has one coming up in a short while. Hopes to have it illustrated by Bok. Last moment arrival of material from various authors thrust the Technocracy article out of this issue. We suggest that all those interested in Technocracy go to your nearest section in your city and save us the trouble of converting you. We will, though, in the winter edition, give you a few facts and predictions made by Technocracy. Address Communications, Futuria Fantasia and LASFL Pub. 3054.5 W 12th St. Los Angeles, Cal. Ray Bradbury, Editor. ****** End of the Project Gutenberg ebook Futuria Fantasia, Fall 1939 ****** Updated editions will replace the previous one, the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose, such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Symbol Electronic Works 1.0. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d. The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e. Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg, 1.e.1. The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. 1.e.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. 1.e.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark symbol website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4, Information about Donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1 Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2 Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3 Limited right of replacement or refund. If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4 Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5 Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6 Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, and C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark symbol's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark symbol and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, UT 84116. 801-596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways including checks, online payments and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks.